Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Questioning a better way, one gracefully disruptive conversation at a time.
Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila. I'm so excited to be with you here today. We are in Big Up Studios in Denver, Colorado. We have one of the founders of Uncle Tim's Cocktails, Tim Felkner. Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila.
Thanks for having me. So excited to be here today.
Yes. Now, this convo's been kind of a long time coming. I ran into you guys at one of our local events this summer, and I always have my eye on things that look cool and taste cool and whatnot. And then I found out you're actually local in Lakewood, like right up the street from my house. We jumped on a phone call, and I'm like, you got to come on Turmeric and Tequila and tell the story of, kind of how you got started. This is the great example of following your passion, making a pivot, and kind of taking a leap into something totally new. So wait, before we get to the business story, tell us about young Tim. Like, give us a little background on how we grew up and the backstory.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I was born in California, but raised in Minnesota. So I got some Midwest roots. And one of my first jobs was in a restaurant. And I was kind of lucky enough to find like my passion very early on. I, just really loved food and beverage, and just when you got to make someone's day by finding them the right, wine or beer or, cocktail or something. I think I wasn't even old enough to drink yet, but I realized there was just kind of magic in the combination of food and beverage. And
did you start as a server or bartender?
I started as a dishwasher.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very early.
Yeah, but even then, I kind of knew that this was something that I wanted to do, and so I started going to school for business. I kind of worked my way up into restaurants. I started managing restaurants by the time I was 20 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And, just really kind of was a sponge. I was learning everything that I could about restaurants and food and beverage. Moved to the front of house, was doing a general manager. So kind of all the front of house stuff, from hiring staff to, putting together wine and cocktail menus and things. So yeah, I kind of quickly worked through the ranks and spent a long time, doing that. I moved out to California when I was in my early 20s. I helped open 6 different restaurants. Just so,
oh, wow.
I think I found that was a passion of mine, was getting something off the ground, up and running, starting something from nothing, walking into a building and there's, literally nothing. It's a construction zone. Yeah. And then, the vision of how do we build this out? Where are we going to put the bar, the seats? What's the menu going to look like? And so I started doing that at first for other people who, wanted to utilize my talent. And then I kind of figured out I want to do this for myself. I want to, make my own visions come to life. So started doing that, opened a couple of my own restaurants in San Francisco.
Okay.
And I was in the restaurant industry for about 15 plus years. And I think eventually that kind of also takes its toll on you, where you realize I work every night, weekend, holiday. And took a step back and realized I probably needed to find something more sustainable. And my wife agreed that, needed to find something that wasn't going to, burn me out, but give me a little bit more, joy and life. And I think all of us, we need to, find a new path at some point in our lives. And I knew for me, I wanted to stay in food and beverage, but I wasn't sure how. And I had been making these bottled cocktails for a number of years, just as a way that when I'd have people over my house, I didn't get stuck behind a bar. I'm sure we've all had that experience. If you make cocktails, you kind of know what that's like. You're hosting people. I was usually cooking as well, so switching back and forth between as my guests are arriving, making them a cocktail, going and making appetizers, and so I was always kind of stuck in the kitchen or the bar. And so I started bottling cocktails as a way to get
just
out from behind. Yeah. And just hey, pour yourself a cocktail. It's everything you need is in the bottle. Just, grab a cup, grab some ice and pour it, maybe add a garnish.
You're a good host. Mine would get there's a 2 liter of Sprite and a tequila right there. However you want to mix it.
Yeah. Well, I think it just came from my years in the restaurant industry. I always had some sort of cocktail that I was working on, or, I was prepping some special simple syrup or making a shrub or something. And so I just kind of wanted to utilize that and make something a little bit, special that, I'd paired this specifically with this dish. I think I'm just always out for these fun flavor combinations. Actually, how I gained the nickname Uncle Tim. Yes, I am an uncle. I get that question all the time. Became an uncle when I was 11 years old, but why this is called Uncle Tim's Cocktails. It's a nickname a friend of mine gave me that they just said, you're like a cool uncle that just has really good taste. Is always introducing us to new flavors. So it kind of stuck. I started writing it on the labels of my bottles I'd give them out as gifts, and people were like, where can I buy these? So it always kind of stuck in the back of my mind that bottled cocktails could be a thing, but I didn't really see it as viable really until COVID, when things shut down and I realized that, people can't go out to their neighborhood bar or restaurant anymore. It's when we really started to see canned and bottled cocktails really take off. Yeah. And that was when I saw, there's real viability in this being a business.
Yeah.
So yeah, it gave me also time to work on it. It took me about kind of 2 years to put the business plan together. Okay. And so we launched, in 2020, kind of coming out of COVID.
Well, this is kind of crazy. I want to ask this first. Did you grow up in like a foodie family? Was like anyone cooking in your house, or like were they really into like tasting nice things? Like was that in the background at all?
Yeah. So I think my grandparents owned a deli, and they sold it before I was born, but my mom and her sisters all worked in the deli. And so I remember hearing these, stories that my mom and my aunts would tell about like, back in the day when we all used to work in the deli and just how much fun it was. And so I think that was originally what got me interested in food and beverage and restaurants. And then, like I said, when I got into it, I just felt like it was already in my blood.
Yeah, it's in there.
Loved it. And then it wasn't until I launched Uncle Tim's Cocktails that my grandfather said, oh, well, it really is in your blood. And I was like, yeah, I know that. He's like, no, your great-grandfather, his father, was a rumrunner during Prohibition in New York. Yeah.
Why does family hold back on the best stories? We get to hear the dumbest stories about that, and then they bust out the good ones.
So I asked him that, and he's like, well, because he was a criminal. And I was like, so? It's like, yeah.
We're like, we know all families are corrupt in some capacity, so like there's no bubble to burst.
And I was like, I think, there's all like, I don't know.
This was like 100 years ago.
It was like 1920s, 30s. Like this is like you'd probably catch me, rum running these days too. I mean,
all I hear is entrepreneurship in that. That's, that's funny. Okay, so it really was like in the blood.
Yeah, I mean, luckily I don't have to smuggle it. I'm all legal. But yeah, I think that really kind of helped set put a little wind in my sail of like, yeah, I can do this. We're doing this. And so, the business model is really, we work with other distilleries and we buy some really premium spirits, and then we mix and bottle. We create our own special recipes for our cocktails. So we're 100%, bottled cocktail focus. We do Negronis, Manhattans, and we're about to release our Old Fashioned series.
Okay.
And so, yeah, these are exactly what you see here. I brought you a couple of samples.
I'm pumped about this new release, and I want to go more to that, but I want to hear more about this because just as a branding professional, I love that you actually had pieces of the path laying itself out. Like before you even had the conscious choice to like make this a business. Mm-hmm. I mean, even like the Uncle Tim's, like you didn't even need a marketing or branding person. Like it was just sort of happening. As it was kind of unfolding, did you see like this path kind of going, or were you just like unconsciously going with it?
I think I was just going with it. Like I remember, the first label I made for it that said Uncle Tim's, I like printed out on, a printer sticker paper. And mostly just because I wanted to give them as gifts, but I didn't want to just do the handwritten labels. So I made them like really professional looking. It said Uncle Tim's Cocktails. But this was like a decade ago.
Yeah.
And with no intention of it ever being a business. It was just kind of like, I want to give this special thing as a gift to my friends who call me Uncle Tim's. And it was kind of a fun thing.
That's huge because I think if you're listening and you have entrepreneurial aspirations or you're just doing something out of like passion and fun, that could be the first like flag in the forest that you're going the right way.
Yeah.
You just gotta follow it. And I really think the more it's just like out of that pure space, likely the more viable it is as a business because you're gonna want to stay in it even when it's hard and go around. But sometimes if you're out there and you're wondering, like sometimes the messages are happening in motion when you don't even know.
Yes.
You just have to pay attention a little bit and just keep moving in that direction.
Yeah. And well, I think the other thing it helped me to do is get some feedback on, I loved doing graphic design. And so I started making them pretty nice, but I'd get feedback on the labels that, again, not really thinking about turning into a business, but people were like, oh, you should make this part bigger or do this. And I'm like, okay. And so I'd like iterate on them and kind of make the labels. And so I think the branding really started developing itself even before I knew I wanted to launch it as a business.
Yes.
And that was kind of really fun to see. They were like, oh, you need to put, the steps on there. And so that's something that we have on our labels today. Or I started handwriting these batch numbers, and that's something we keep on the labels today. So,
well, as a marketing branding professional, I always say like, I'm a phenomenal creative, but the best thing you can do is get to know the client or really the mission and the human behind the mission, and then reveal what's already there versus like create something new. Because everyone's like, especially if you're really passionate about it, like there's something really cool and beautiful and creative and unique already there. You totally don't need to reinvent the wheel. You just have to tell the story.
Right.
And like tell what it is. And people are like, oh shit, that's so cool. Like that actually happened. It wasn't just a creative like putting it together. Like this is the truth. And that's pretty special.
Right. Well, and I think if you're not in a hurry to launch a business, then those years of test marketing for us were really valuable. Even once I figured out that I wanted to launch it as a business, we spent almost 2 years testing recipes and really refining, the spirits that we wanted to use, really dialing in the labels, these box sets, kind of what our go-to-market strategy was going to be. And so I think it really kind of helped that my business partner and I like really took our time to figure out those components to the business. So then when it came time to launch, we had so many ideas and we had kind of thrown out a lot of the bad ones and, hopefully kept a lot of the good ones. And just give yourself time to iterate for sure.
I agree. I think it's always kind of like the measure twice, cut once. Notoriously, I've probably cut first and then just cut a bunch of times and then got a new piece of cloth.
Yeah.
Don't do that. But I think not rushing it, taking your time. And again, also just like letting the story unfold a little bit. You got to do your market research. You got to have proof of concept, all these things. And I think even as you're testing that, you're kind of already building your community because you have people engaged in the process along the way. So you already have like buy-in from like your future influencers as you're doing all this stuff. And then when they're a part of the process, they're that much more engaged in what's happening.
Right.
Did you guys have people from like the very beginning that are in the mix that are still in the mix now?
Yeah, absolutely. We have, some of our first, as we were getting launched, we did a friends and family round of investment. So some of my friends who, tried some of these cocktails 10 years ago are investors in our company.
That's awesome.
So it's really cool to see our friends take this ride with us and really kind of, want to see us succeed. But, they were some of the ones that were there from the beginning before it was even a business idea.
I love it. No pressure like when it's your friends and family either.
Oh, right.
It's totally different. It's like playing, like when you do individual sports versus team sports, you're like, oh shit, like there's pressure when it's just me, but now that we got the whole crew in the mix, like it's a whole different animal. So tell me about the move from San Francisco, like food, beverage, like there's a lot going on. It's a big city, to Denver. Obviously, I'm a born and raised Colorado kid, so I'm biased. But it's a switch. And when we talk about this in my creative spaces, like these are still growing markets compared to like big cities.
Yeah.
Like tell me about that switch from San Fran to Denver.
I think both my wife and I had spent over a decade in San Francisco, and I think we were ready to be someplace a little bit smaller, but still be in a city.
Yeah.
We wanted to, do the typical, like buy a house, start a family, all of that. But we still wanted to go out to be able to get like a nice meal and, see a show. And, Denver to me felt like a nice mix between my, Midwest roots and, a big city like San Francisco, and I know a lot of people complain about the pricing out here, but at least it was a little more affordable than San Francisco.
San Francisco is comparable to like New York City nowadays.
Yeah,
so
it really is.
You're the one human out here that's not complaining.
I know.
So we'll take the positivity wherever we can get it.
So it definitely was a bit of a shift, but also kind of welcome. I was ready to slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think I've noticed that the culture of Colorado is great. People really value the outdoors. And so, I don't work in an office, but I try to just absorb the culture of like, it's okay to like clock out early on a Friday and head up to the mountains. And, I certainly work a lot less than I used to.
Yeah.
And to me, that was like a goal of moving out here, just having better work-life balance.
Absolutely. Well, here's the beautiful thing. Like I'm very obviously involved in, I'm a longtime athlete, competitor. Then there's a lot of social that goes with that, after parties or whatever, tastings or that kind of thing. But I would always have like stickers or something on me and had zero intention of like any business conversation, and then be on a ski lift and, we'll drink a shooter of something and they'll be like, oh, where'd you do that? Da, da, da. The social has been probably 80% of my best clients, and I'm not even talking about like big money deals, but like some of the humans I really have enjoyed working with the most.
Yeah.
So opportunity is everywhere. You don't always have to have this mindset of like, I'm working 9 to 5 in the office. If you're walking out and you genuinely bleed something, people, the next opportunity can come to you if you're just out there and talking about it and just living it.
Right. Yeah.
Have you had that at all happen to you?
Definitely. Yeah. I think, I mean, Uncle Tim's Cocktails, obviously named after me. I feel like I'm always on, when I'm out
You
there.
did that to yourself, man.
Yeah, right. But at the same time, I think that, this is it. Also, the brand is like who I am. I love to host. I love to entertain. I love bringing people together, especially over food and beverage. I find that like when you really break bread with someone or have a cocktail, that like you take time to slow down, get to know them, kind of do what we're doing now, where it's just like you have a more detailed conversation. You really kind of like find each other's, passions. You might find a way to help each other out. I think that's where, a lot of doors have opened in our business because of that. So yeah, I think me being somebody who loves to host and loves to bring people together and loves to build community is why this brand exists.
I love it. Well, that's why, like you said, the social works, because you get a chance to not even have the sales conversation. It's just like, you do this, you do that. Oh my God, our missions align. Tell me more about X, Y, and Z. That's so cool. I'll call you on Monday, or let's figure it out, or whatever. And in Colorado, we really do need each other because it is such an like up and coming situation.
Yeah.
You need to create your team, whether it's like marketing and branding, or like you said, other local distributors or local craft cocktail creators. Like you need all these things really to make it work. And it's more fun if you can find the like-minded people you want to work with.
Right.
And then kind of vibe off their energy and their mission and that kind of stuff. So you need all that to really get by.
Mm-hmm.
You touched on some great stuff, mental health and community, obviously 2 pillars of turmeric and tequila.
Yeah.
Was mental health like a big conversation as you're moving from San Francisco to Colorado? You said it was like about slowing down and whatnot, but being mission-driven and purpose-fulfilling, it was like the mental health always a conscious conversation in the household?
Yeah, I think so. I think I knew that, restaurants for me weren't sustainable in the long run from the long hours that they take. I also felt like I had put a lot of my personal life and desires aside in order to work so much. And, it seemed like, at some point, I was the one suffering from my own kind of decisions. And I think, unfortunately, the restaurant industry, especially when you become a manager or owner, like really promotes overworking and doesn't promote looking after your mental health as much. And, I think that I needed to change it up a little bit in order to just get a new perspective, a new community, a new, kind of, a place where, it was just kind of a fresh start for me and my wife. And this, it also just allowed me to kind of take a step back and realize what was really important. And like I said, after building this company, I felt like I've kind of built in a much more sustainable lifestyle where I don't have to work every night or every weekend. I, now have a 2-year-old, so I get to spend time at home and hang out with him. And, just to me, that was like so important. As I thought about building this company, I was like, well, I want to build it around my lifestyle. I want to build something that really works for me, for my social life, for my mental health, and really I was able to do that sort of from the beginning.
That's awesome. Well, and I think it's important for mission-driven, like purposeful humans. You got to keep the purpose in there. So you got to find the balance of how much can I bleed what it is I want to do and create, and keeping the balance of my priorities around my family, relationships, passions, other athletics, whatever else you want to do. Like it's really hard to find that balance in doing all things. And in 2023, I think, you can work from home, you can start your own business.
Yeah.
And even better, you can hear people's stories and then intentionally shop those products to support people that are like-minded or trying to do the same thing.
Right. Yes. And I think that's also why in our like employee handbook, like our company's, vision and values are very much just they're mine, they're my values that I try to live every day, but try to infuse into our company. And it kind of helps me stay focused on the things that continue to give me energy as well. I think that is important for sustainability of a company is like sustainability of the founder. Like what is going to allow you in the long run, 5-10 years from now to still be, excited about going to work. And I think some of that is building in, your own passions. I love to host people. I love to be creative. I love, building community. I love kind of being playful at work and kind of, you look at our Instagram, we have a lot of like videos around comedy and stuff because it just kind of makes it more fun to like be a part of. And sometimes that's the content that does the best for us. It's just us being silly behind the camera.
Being the human,
Yeah.
like letting that relatable thing. Like marketing and branding has changed so much, which is so good because it went from this like super strict, stringent, like keep it all together to like a little bit messier, a little bit more realistic. And it's like, oh, this business doesn't have every single piece together, or they actually have fun on the job, or, this, and this, or they're really open about sharing their core values and, or mission, vision, values to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just gotten so much more humanized, which is really nice because that's really what we need in this world in general is connection and knowing that like we all kind of don't have it all together.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a little bit of grace within that.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us about like core values or mission, vision, values that are for you personally, because attitude always reflects leadership.
Yeah.
That are particularly important that you carry on to the business.
Sure. Well, I just mentioned a few of them, but like I try to put like love and passion into everything I do. I think that's why, I started here of just like, hey, these are things that I am passionate about. And I think when that comes across to our employees or to, the customers when we're at a market or something, you can taste it as well. Like we use premium spirits because we think you should really enjoy what you're drinking. You shouldn't have to shoot it. You should really, these are sipping cocktails for a reason. Like you want to savor them.
Yeah.
And just the same way, I like savoring a cocktail. I want to savor conversation or connection. And so, to me, that's kind of what we build into our cocktails, but it's also what we try to build into any event that we're hosting, or you come to our tasting room and it's like very much centered around like, hey, you're here, like slow down, take your time, sip on this. We don't have anything we're shooting. We're just kind of like, it's a very chill environment that I think is really meant to build and bring connection.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, community obviously sounds like a major part of your DNA. Did you do any like personally like coaching or therapy or anything that helped you kind of like organize this conscious like internal conversation? Because this isn't, I'm 43, just turned.
Yeah.
And these aren't conversations that I grew up with. And I'm so fortunate that mostly as an athlete, and a lot of like human optimization clients that I've worked with, it was like neurofeedback and then like personal coaching. And I didn't know I needed it. I did, but it wound me to those things. I'm like, oh, this would have been great 20 years ago.
Right.
But did you do anything like that helped facilitate this?
I've done a lot of personal work, you know. Yes, therapy. I did my yoga teacher training because I really wanted to, kind of further my practice there. I've done a lot of like meditation retreats, and I feel like all of those have really kind of led to me to realize like I always felt like I used to have like a separate like work Tim and a play Tim, and that those never felt like very cohesive. And I honestly feel like now I get to live like one person throughout. And I think that's why I don't ever feel like I'm like having to put on a character to be somebody that I'm not.
Yeah.
And I think through also starting, multiple different businesses, it took me a while to realize that I wanted a business that felt like a direct reflection of me and my values, and that was going to be a key to sustainability.
Absolutely. I mean, to be honest, especially if you're on tour, there is no other way. Like you either have to bleed it, otherwise you're just gonna have such resistance trying to stay in it. Yeah. There'll be a point where hopefully you sell, but if not, it goes the other direction and it's no good. When you felt kind of that pull of two different people, because this is like very much like the ethos in turmeric and tequila, did you feel like it was you that kind of had that narrative of being two different people, or do you think it was like society being like, no, this is work and this is play? Like, where do you think that narrative came from?
Probably a little bit from society of like feeling that I needed to be this like, I don't know, hyper masculine businessman, and play that role and, not, be like, cause, love to be playful and party and dance and things like that as well. So, I just felt like I had to keep those worlds separate. Yes, through society. But also I think because I felt like the projects that I was working on, the restaurants either that I was launching for other people or even myself, I didn't feel like were ever like a true reflection of me because I was still discovering who that was.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it really took a lot of personal work to get there, to get to the deeper part of it until I didn't have a choice, but I can only be me. There's only one me.
Yep.
So that's what I'm going to represent to the world. I'm going to be, happier that way. And then to let a business kind of come forth naturally after that has felt like, in some ways, not as much of a struggle as it was to uphold this, this dual personality.
Yeah. Yeah. That's literally what it's all about. Because I think it is, well, it's society or it's our internal monologue, but a lot of times our internal monologue comes from like how we were raised and that society impact in there. So it's coming from one direction or not, but it's hard, I think, especially for our generation to kind of take a pause on it and then decide to consciously be like, wait a second, what can I actually do here? Because outside of the business model and making money and doing the purpose, you got to remember this is our life and like our days are numbered. So you actually got to enjoy the ride and you got to find the balance. And if that's going from this crazy high stress restaurant industry to like a high end yogi and then doing craft cocktails, like I love it so much because even though it doesn't make sense, it makes perfect sense because we wear all these hats and we do all these things.
Right. And
that's why I love talking about it because like our young people in particular, I really want them to know like, usually with all these little juxtapositions that don't make sense, but even more importantly, it's arrows pointing us on like stuff you should be doing and passions you should be following and doing all these things that don't fit together and then channeling into one zone that makes you your most purposeful self for the greater good. So that's a really cool journey. I mean, it was really like pinball machine of like different things. But it kind of makes sense.
It does make sense. And I know for me, I went to business school and I felt like that was, looking back on that now, it was super helpful to kind of learn how business works. But it's also like the way that business is taught is very masculine, and very like, this is how it's done. And so you try that on. And if it doesn't fit, it doesn't feel good, you don't know another path. So you have to learn, you have to see what else is out there. And I know from doing the work on myself, it felt better to be more balanced, to have a more balanced masculine and feminine approach to life. And so that's now how I treat my business, is just kind of looking at it from a more balanced state, not a certain like prescription of this is how you have to do it, but there might be new ways of doing it. And, learning from also just seeing like everything around you as a teacher, from my little 2-year-old to how other people are doing businesses, or, just what I love, coming on your podcast is like, I'm probably going to take something away today that I learn and like incorporate that into who I am and into my business.
Hey, I hope so. Yeah. That's the best compliment ever right there. I hope so. Make it good. Just don't take that with you.
Yeah.
No, I think that's so great. And that masculine energy, it's so funny because it's like, that's so true. I mean, how do you think women going through it feel? Where it's just like, do this. And you're like, oh my God, I need like my best skirt suit to like do all the things. But what's really cool, and I'm curious to notice if you've noticed a change, our young people's approach to things are so different. Social media obviously has come up and they're not as quick to buy into things. They've grown up with like this overexposure of things, which obviously has positive negatives, but they don't buy into things I think we automatically did.
Right.
Have you noticed that with some of your clientele? Obviously it's 21 plus, but have you noticed shifts over these past few years on like how the clientele interacts different or talks about it different or anything like that?
Certainly, yes. Also we've found a lot of success working with local influencers, and so I've gotten to like kind of work and find their take. And a lot of them are kind of younger 20-somethings who really understand what it takes to build an online community and speak to a certain group of people. And so just hearing how they work and some of their feedback and I think has been super helpful.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that I've appreciated that they really enjoy about our cocktails or, our tasting room is just that it's the vibe, the energy that we've kind of put into it that is very makes it very easy for people to host at home or to have a cocktail party at our tasting room. Because I think people really care about quality, and if we can communicate the quality of what's, in our cocktails, it kind of just takes like pressure off. Like they know it's going to be good. They know they're going to be like happy and proud serving it to their friends. And I know that like that's kind of where we started, is just like, I want something that I'd be proud serving in my own home. Given my background and everything, my standards are pretty high.
Yeah.
And I just didn't see a lot on the market that really was something that I would serve to my, friends or family. And I think once you kind of realize that, like, okay, well, this is where we're coming from. We're coming from a place of like, we want you to feel comfortable with the quality product. It kind of just like makes things easy for people.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think the magic really, even alongside the product, is just creating that space.
Yeah.
And like a super warm, welcoming space. And we just don't get a lot of that in this world anymore. And I think back in the day, that's kind of why Starbucks did pretty well early on. Like the coffee, whatever your opinion is on it, it was a space to do quicker business or have conversation, and it kind of created like this warm environment. And that was the initial ticket to the success. So I think holding space and with not such a corporate-y vibe.
Yeah.
And really showing up and like, hey, how are you? This is this. And like, I really put every ounce of love. Like, I want to tell you about this. People really adhere to that nowadays. Like, they want to slow down. They want to hear about it. We don't always have time, but it's when you do, you can constantly be like, oh, I really want to go when I've got a couple hours, when I can do this.
Well, and you still got to come by the tasting room.
I do. It's I'm one of those.
How we've built it out is we have these beautiful little living rooms. And so, it's kind of fun that you come in, you walk into a warehouse, you kind of think you're in the wrong place, but it has a little bit of a speakeasy vibe.
Yes.
And, these little living rooms are kind of built to just make people feel really comfortable. It's not set up like a very open, loud bar. You go into a little, living room and kind of sit and have a cocktail. I've had people like then join other people and make friends in those rooms.
Cool. Okay.
And I think what's really, awesome as well is we've been in that space a year and a half and realizing like we already need a bigger space.
That's awesome.
If I can put that out into, to the community out there, is like, hey, we're looking for a new space. We're looking for something a little bit larger, so that we can host more people. There's a lot of demand we're finding out there for the type of space that we provide, and to connect with more people, and then a lot of people really like being able to host events with us. So we want a bigger space so we can do both.
I love that. And it's, I like, it's kind of like the build it and they will come. Because that wasn't really a traditional approach to like downtown Denver and the bar scene. And sometimes you just don't know. I know you had like extensive background in research and experience.
Yeah.
It's still a new market. Denver's a little bit finicky on things. Lakewood isn't downtown Denver. Like, did you have any apprehension about taking this sort of leap?
Well, we knew we needed a production space, and we are technically still in Denver. We're just like Southwest Denver, right off of like Santa Fe and Mississippi.
Okay.
So, I think what we've realized is we were very much off the beaten path, which was great for, our production, but we weren't sure if the tasting room would really kind of take off there, because it's, very much just in a warehouse district that, isn't very traveled. But I think we've done a really good job of getting people there and, getting people excited about a space that isn't in downtown Denver.
Yeah.
And so we've kind of had to build, from the ground up there, but it's really turned out that it was a great decision for us.
Yeah. Oh, I think there's a massive market. If you can connect accordingly, because some things out here are still a little bit disconnected. And that's why I like to get my Denver people out, because we're all like mission-driven people, but it's still kind of hard to find one another in some capacity out here.
Yeah.
But if you can tap in, I think a lot of people do want something that's not in the mainstream city and that has like this different kind of experience or whatever it might be. Like they're out here. And I do think too, you can be intentional about your marketing stuff, but if you bleed it genuinely, like the energy will come through. Like it'll happen.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, so tell me like about the hard part, because like entrepreneurship from the get-go is never an easy thing.
Yeah.
And it can be glamorous, but it can also be really brutal, especially, married with kids and like all these liabilities essentially. Tell me about some of the hard part and how you stayed in it.
Yeah. Well, I think initially we didn't even honestly know what it would take to get launched. We were kind of like, I want to launch this bottled cocktail. But I, at the beginning, almost thought like, oh, maybe I can just go buy brands that you see in a liquor store from a distributor and mix and bottle those like I would do at home.
Okay.
And no, you absolutely cannot do that. We had to go through all the same licensing and become a distillery. Even though we don't distill. So we had to get federal licensing, state licensing. It took us, the better part of 2 years to like get those licenses, find a space, like I said, do that friends and family around. And so I think that like stayed in it because I knew that it was the right move, but it was just really a long process, much longer than I thought it was going to be just to get launched.
Yeah.
And like I said, we just kind of utilized that. It wasn't in a hurry, but we utilized that time to do a lot of test marketing and really kind of dial in the recipes and the product and the marketing. But I think having a really good business partner has really helped as well. I have certainly had varying degrees of success of that in my past. And so I decided to go into business with a friend who I'd known for, 12 years back from San Francisco.
Okay.
And it turns out that was like one of the best decisions I made going into this business. So
because people say some like friends and family in business can always be a little bit shaky. And I've had actually experience on both sides where it wasn't so great and it was actually the best thing ever. So I think it depends.
I think it totally depends. I think in this case, it has really worked out to have a friend that I can, rely on, somebody who, we are rock climbers. So we can have our board meetings, outdoors on a rock climbing wall or while we're backpacking or hiking or something. And so it's just nice, somebody that you actually get along with and want to spend time with.
Yeah.
And, you can iterate on your business in these like beautiful places when you're hanging out and not feel pressure, again, for it to look a certain way, that it has to be in an office setting or something like that.
You are a Colorado kid at 100%.
Yeah.
Like you're taking a meeting on a rock climbing thing.
Yeah.
All you need is like a flannel and a dog.
Totally.
Like, you're completely in. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay. So how you guys have known each other for 12 years and you've been in business how long?
For a couple of years now. Yep.
Okay. Do you have good words of advice of like when you're like, back's against the wall, I don't want to do this anymore. Oh, it's really, really hard. Maybe I don't want to do this anymore, but it's just like, what are we going to do next? Like, do you have any good advice for entrepreneurs that are like in the thick of it?
I know for me, I just find ways to connect to myself. So for me, that's getting out in nature. That's doing some yoga, meditation. I'm part of a wellness community called Archipelago, and I just go there in sauna, or they have like breathwork classes. And
cool. Kind of where's that at?
It's off of 7th Street, just like near the aquarium off of 25.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dang, I'm pretty
beautiful,
connected.
Yeah, it's a beautiful space. But it's just like having those places that you go to kind of like tap into yourself again, to re-energize, to get into the right headspace so that you can alleviate some of that stress, but then also be in a better decision-making mode. So I know that like if I'm having a hard time making a decision or feeling stressed out, a lot of that is just like, I need a process, I need to get back centered myself and then, go back to the problem. And then oftentimes the solution is there, you know? So.
Dude, you're perfect to freaking tequila. It's like send out whatever. All right, let's go have an old fashioned, like right on to like, right to the gospel.
It's about balance for sure. I think that, we are, a lot of alcohol brands out there like really talk about drink responsibly, but it's like, the rest of their branding doesn't match. I think our our brand is very much like drink responsibly and like, live a life of balance. Like, that's really important, I think, to me. And it's important that that's the, what we put out into the world.
I love it. Well, so the holidays are coming up and, there was some SNL skit where it's like someone drinking wine and they're like, no, give me the holiday pour. So it's like the big glass because family's in town. That's a lot. Like there's a lot of things going on. It's a big season for you guys. So you said, tell me about like anything that's coming out, anything you want to talk about, anything we should look for.
Yeah. So, I brought you one of these gift sets. This is our Manhattan series, our little 3-bottle tasting sets. We do a Negroni series, we do a Manhattan series, and we are about to release our Old Fashioned series.
Okay.
So that's the newest one in the mix. So these little tasting sets make great gifts. And you get, 3 different variations on, one of those cocktails.
I love it.
I also brought the unreleased gin Old Fashioned, which is part of the Old Fashioned series that is about to come out. So we're very excited for that. We're also adding a limited release Black Walnut Manhattan. So that's just for the holidays. So when that's gone, it's gone.
Okay.
So very excited to have a seasonal release as well. And we're popping up at several holiday markets in and around Denver. We're doing the Cherry Creek Market again.
Oh, cool.
And a holiday market in Park Meadows. You can swing by the tasting room and pick up a bottle. We also, as of this year, can ship to now 40 states.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we have an online retail partner that helps us, expand our network. So if you're looking to give gifts, you can ship them from our website all over the country.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay. That logistical stuff is we're trying to make that happen with apparel and things. And I'm like, oh my God, I just want to host the podcast, like all this other stuff. That's amazing. Are you guys in liquor stores, or what's the best way to find you? If
We
you are
are.
local?
Yeah. If you go to uncletimscocktails.com, we have a store locator. You can find all the stores that we're in. They're mostly around the Denver metro. And like I said, our website can ship, but you can find all the events that we're going to be at, events that we're hosting, everything on our website or on our Instagram.
Okay, cool. Do you want to share that website?
Yeah, Uncle Tim's
Instagram?
Cocktails.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
You got it all. If you're in the Denver area, I'll come over there. I'm going to get some B-roll so people can see the actual space. But do you have any good words of advice, human-wise or business-wise, or anything else maybe we didn't touch on that you want to share?
Yeah. I mean, I think for entrepreneurs out there, I'll just share, some of the things that I've learned, which is, make sure that you have found something that you can really be passionate about. I know for me that like keeps me excited about going to work every day. Hopefully find a good business partner that you are also excited to be hanging out with, making decisions with, and how they're going to handle the tough times, because they will be there. I think be willing to just kind of open up, be vulnerable, share what you love and what you've learned with people and your community, and you'll realize, how quickly that opens doors for you. I think that, it took for me, really, like I said, doing all that deep work myself and identifying really what was important to me, what my values are, before I think I realized how that itself was like the impetus for this business, for, and for me, it could be baking bread. But if I was living by the same values and bringing those to the surface, it would still build community. It would still like bring connection. It would still be fulfilling for me. My passion and expertise just happens to lie in cocktails.
There you go.
Yeah.
I love that. 2 more questions, actually. I lied to you. But is there anything big that you want or you want to put out to manifest? Maybe you haven't said out loud?
Yeah. Well, I kind of mentioned it, but I'll put it out there specifically. We were looking for a new tasting room.
Okay.
We were about to launch a Kickstarter to help sort of fund that move and find us a new space. So you could help by either, letting us know some space that you think is awesome that we should take over. Ideally, maybe it has some distilling capacity so that we can add distilling operations, very soon. We'd love to distill some of our own spirits as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a whole other level.
I know.
I'm with it. And this is the last question. What is success to you?
Success for me is just living my values. I think for me, it's a feeling. It's like, where am I at based on, how I feel about myself? And it's not something that can be measured externally, really. I want the business to succeed and have success, but I don't want to do it at the cost where I don't feel successful, and I think that's why, for me, it really starts with the inner work, with, my mental health. And then I really believe that will, kind of bleed into the business and to the success of it, and getting it out there. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's so funny because we talk about community mental health and it really does take a village and individuality, like you doing your own things, embracing the things that make you different, embracing that and accepting it, then that makes you the best team member that you can be.
Yeah.
But in our society, it's so much like, you don't need to be an individual, be a teammate, do this. And they're not really put together. But I just echo your statements. I think you said it so beautifully. You've got to lean in, do your stuff, understand yourself, have radical self-acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can show up as like the best teammate and find the path.
Yeah, exactly. And, obviously we have our sales goals and, targets and everything that we want to hit and achieve in the coming, years. But I don't think we can get there unless I am the best version of myself. And so I think it's a balance of like, yes, I want to, see the company grow by X percent, but I know that in order for that to happen, I have to be bringing, all of me, to the business. And in order to do that, I need to be checking in with myself every day, having my morning yoga, meditation, and really just making sure that when I get to work, I can come with that same, passion and bring all my values to the table.
I love it. Amen. So well said. I'm so glad to have you in Colorado.
Yeah.
You definitely have a Colorado heart. Like it's written all over the wall.
Awesome.
I think that's so funny. And there's nothing I love more than a yogi slinging cocktails because that's what we need in this world. Zened out and then still doing like a little bit of the party side with like really conscious conversation.
Awesome.
That's amazing.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on. Maybe down the road, we'll figure out how to do like a turmeric and tequila tasting or party or something in your space. So we'll do something creative and get some of our Denver friends in the mix.
Awesome. Well, one of the cocktails we're working on for next year is a mezcal Negroni.
Oh,
so
well, how about your girl?
Yeah,
okay.
that fits for sure.
Yeah. And tell me about like, I can tell you about this off camera, obviously, but Kickstarters or events, like we always try and bring the community back together and we've got fitness events. So if you ever want to sample, we always just try and make it all work because it really does take a village out here.
Yeah, it does.
But on the flip side, we have some really big movers and shakers that are doing big things.
Yeah.
So, just gotta have a good time, do some yoga and shake hands.
Right.
Good. Well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll reconnect soon in this new space.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Tim.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for joining Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Tune in next time and don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.